So 1953's Niagara is underrated, really, in two camps. Firstly, as a film noir, it's not really brought up because it's shot in eye-frazzling Technicolor, and to be fair, is justly overshadowed by some of cinema's great noir works. And secondly, as a Marilyn Monroe movie, again being edged out by the likes of Some Like It Hot or The 7-Year Itch. And these films solidified her image as a great leading lady, of course, in romantic comedies. And in the case of the former, somewhat of a ditzy dame, the prototype dumb blonde, if you like. The great tragedy of Monroe's career was that she could have been remembered for so much more. You only have to look a little closer to see some of her earliest film work was John Huston's The Asphalt Jungle from 1950, a dark little heist thriller. And a few years later, she was one of the leads in Henry Hathaway's bleak and, for the time, quite shocking waterfall thrillers, Niagara. Let's take a look. So 1953's Niagara is the story of a honeymooning couple, Jean Peters and Max Showalter, who visit the falls and get embroiled in a bizarre double-cross murder mystery between Joseph Cotten and Marilyn Monroe. You see, Cotten's an army veteran who's clearly suffering from some kind of post-traumatic stress, and Monroe's his gorgeous young wife who's planning on getting rid of him so she can run off with some young hunk. The film has an odd opening with Cotten stumbling back from the falls at 5 a.m, contemplating existence.
Why should the falls drag me down here at 5 o'clock in the morning? To show me how big they are and how small I am? To remind me they can get along without any help? All right, so they've proved it.
Strangely, there isn't actually any more film noir-esque narration in the film, and we're soon introduced to the film's main protagonist, and no, it's actually not Marilyn Monroe, despite what the posters will tell you, but an excellent Jean Peters, who I don't think ever topped her 1953 double whammy of this film and Pick Up on South Street. Now, I do have a couple of issues with Niagara, and one of which is Showalter as Jean Peters' husband. He's actually really irritating with his kind of aw shucks overacting, kind of belonging in a different movie, to be honest.
Get out the fire hose. Why don't you ever get a dress like that?
Listen, for a dress like that, you've got to start laying plans when you're about 13.
Joseph Cotten, however, is great as the damaged war veteran, not only suffering from some unspoken trauma, but also not helped by having to suffer jealousy and suspicion due to having a carefree party girl of a wife in the shape of Monroe.
Did you ever see the river up above the falls? You throw in a log, it just floats around. Let it move a little further down and it gets going fast. It hits some rocks and in a minute it's in the lower rapids, and nothing in the world, including God himself, I suppose, can keep it from going over the edge.
I think this is one of Cotten's last really good roles, which is a shame because he acted for another 25 years after this, but he already had Citizen Kane, The Magnificent Ambersons, The Third Man, and a handful of Hitchcock movies under his belt, so it wasn't bad going. Anyway, that being said, the two main stars of Niagara that the film was sold on was rightly Marilyn Monroe and the actual falls themselves. Now, I promise we'll talk about Monroe in this video, but first I need to mention that despite featuring a plot of infidelity, betrayal and murder, this is pretty much a 90-minute travel commercial for Niagara Falls. Throughout the film, we get bombarded with amazing shots of the falls, and they are astonishing. We get to watch our characters go on all the excursions that the falls offered in 1953 anyway. Seriously, if you have that in mind when you watch it, it hilariously becomes an advert for Niagara Falls Tourist Commission with a thriller plot woven into it. It's great stuff. Anyway, so Marilyn Monroe. This was the first film where she actually received star billing, despite arguably not being the best thing in it, as I mentioned. As the unfaithful and scheming Rose Loomis, Monroe plays the only villainous role of her career too. Obviously, her career was cut short by her death in 1962 at only 36 years old, but Monroe owned the 50s. In this year alone, she made Niagara, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, and How to Marry a Millionaire, with even bigger hits ahead of her. Here, at only 27 years old, she's already an astonishing screen presence. And here in her first Technicolor film, there isn't a second of screen time when she doesn't look amazing. Whether she's lounging about in bed in the early hours of the morning, whether she's fresh out of the shower, just wearing a shower cap, whether she's in a hospital bed, she's always immaculately made up. And the filmmakers let her use all of her tricks, so she gets to strut around in mind-boggling outfits. We get a little singing number, and of course she gets to detonate that physics-defying walk. In fact, come to think of it, the first act of Niagara, in addition to introducing us to the cast and the plot, is all about ogling Monroe, sometimes to illustrate a plot point, having her easily turning heads, and other times just because. So the film's got a fantastic screenplay, both in terms of plot and dialogue. I love that after Cotten and Monroe's introduction at the beginning, the whole thing shifts to Peters and Showalter, and then back to Cotten, and then Monroe, and then Cotten, and then Monroe again. You're never quite sure who to root for exactly, or where it's going, or who will survive it. And eventually the thriller aspect replaces the Monroe ogling and delivers a wet and windy finale that's well set up by a few well-executed but off-screen murders. So yeah, despite it being in dazzling Technicolor, it's absolutely a film noir. It's even shot like one. The only thing it's missing is its black and white photography. Directed by Henry Hathaway, who jumped between westerns and noir thrillers for the majority of his career, here he delivers a tight 90-minute thriller with a plot that's exciting and often quite unpredictable. And despite the wishy-washy Max Showalter, assembles an immaculate cast and fashions a great murder most foul plot featuring intriguing nuggets of unresolved mental health issues. But it also doesn't skimp on celebrating his star's hip-swaying talents that certainly must have pushed cinematic boundaries in 1953, but in turn cannonballed Monroe into superstardom as the world's premier sex symbol. Go check it out.